program where we can have hopefully another 30 minutes maybe or so of Q&A. Can you ask questions and eat at the same time?
As a person who's been on television quite a lot,
Maybe at the end he'll open it up.
Most of the speak on air, it's usually a cycle of condemning actions back and forth. And once in a while they're going to throw in a question that's completely off topic and going to be associated towards something that's completely un-Islamic or anti-Islamic. And there's a part of you that has to be prepared for that. Is there any opportunity to speak about these issues and probably try to promote a positive aspect of Islam?
Excellent question. So I think everybody heard the question? Yeah. So it is not an easy thing, of course, and over the years you learn which stations you want to participate in to begin with. Initially you feel that you have the good heart and you think that any person calling, they must be sincere, they must be genuine, they really want to know, and then you realize some of these are actually short, one step short of being a KKK radio station, for example. So for that, you don't want to waste your time, because no one with a grain of intelligence listens to these shows anyway. And if they do, they're already brainwashed, and there's nothing you can say that will make any sense. So you have to pick your audience, pick your time. Your time is more valuable than just sitting there and being a sitting duck for a bunch of racist people who think you're subhuman. But for mainstream media outlets, it's important to go there with a couple of intentions. One, obviously, you do your homework, know what the topic is, what they're going to be asking about, so you can have something intelligent to contribute with. But more importantly, as someone who holds a message, go with an intention that my goal is, I'm not there to speak to the host. The host is only part of a show. The host is not there to be convinced about anything. Actually, sometimes they're asking questions that they don't believe in because they have to keep the show going on and they have to ask questions that they think their viewers might have on their mind, or whatever it is. So you go there, not there to convince the host, you're there to speak to people on the fence. You're not going to speak to the people who hate you. If somebody is racist, there's nothing you can do. If somebody is an Islamophobe, there's nothing you can do other short of renouncing Islam to make them happy. So we can sit there and condemn terrorism between now and tomorrow. They don't care. If you condemn it, they're going to say you're lying, you're pretending, right? And if you talk about something else, you didn't condemn it. So you're not going to win. So don't waste time with these people. And those who are sane, people who are fair-minded, people who are intelligent enough and educated, they know they're actually waiting for you to say something that they can benefit from, so they're not there to question you, question your humanity. So that's good. The ones you're there for are the people on the fence, people who are not necessarily bad, they're not evil, their hearts are not filled with anger and hatred, but maybe they've been listening to some propaganda. Maybe somebody had been filling their head with, watch out, all these immigrants are going to take our jobs, all these brown people are going to impact our culture, all these blah, 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 whatever it is that the group that they hate, whatever the flavor of the day might be. So you're there to hopefully maybe appeal to their heart, to their common sense. Because at the end of the day, most people are good people. Most people, no one is born evil. No one is born like, I'm going to hate people. It is something that influences them, that conditions them in that way. Propaganda, bad parenting, bad schooling, bad neighborhood, bad president. Everybody contributes to the fueling of that ignorance, and then you build that ignorance, and then with some bigotry, and you have a bad formula. So yes, you go there with that intention, and obviously you have a chance for sound bites, right? So you don't have a lot of time. It's not hours. It's not 10 minutes. Usually, a typical interview is about a couple of minutes. You literally have about 30, 40 seconds to say something of substance, short of "Thank you for having me. It was a great day." It's going to be. You literally have 20 seconds, so you have to be prepared on what message I want to leave with. A good example of that recently, because it relates to your question, but it also relates to the topic about the greatness of immigrants. Think about if we didn't have immigration, we wouldn't have great leaders today in Congress, like Congresswoman Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and Alexandria Ocasio, right? If we didn't have that immigration, their parents wouldn't have come here, they wouldn't have come here, their grandparents, and dozens of others. So recently the president decided to tweet attacks on Ilhan Omar, making some nonsense comments, as he typically does. It seems to be his hobby, I guess, to basically defame her and smear her, and somehow link her, and through that same process, the American Muslim community with the attacks on 9/11, as if she had something to do with that terrorist attacks, right? So he posted a tweet from her time when she spoke at the CARE event, and fueling, inciting the hate against her, knowing that there are thousands of people who, unfortunately, are half-brained and filled with anger and filled with ignorance, and to the point where actually they were making death threats against her. Even CARE office received a bomb threat 2 weeks ago from these type of people. Now, I was asked on TV to come and comment on this issue. And I went, and my comment were, I wasn't there to go and say and explain. I didn't need to go and say, oh, as a matter of fact, like all of us do, condemn terrorism and all of that, because anyone knows she condemns terrorism. Anyone knows, if you're in Congress, your allegiance to this country, to this Constitution, to the safety of every person in America. Actually, anyone who doubts that needs some real help.
Well, that's the Benjamin.
But instead of making that comment, instead of dealing with that issue, is actually pointing out to how dangerous this thing is. Focusing on how dangerous Islamophobia as a form of racism that exists, the way anti-Semitism is, the way anti-black sentiment is, the way anti-Latino rhetoric is very dangerous to dehumanize others. And that was my, on TV and various interviews that I did on radio. My focus was to make sure that we humanize each other. Talk about what she stands for. Talk about not how she is being depicted by someone who has no consideration to her safety, or the safety of my children, or the safety of my family, unfortunately. So instead of sitting there, you go there with that, you say, I'm gonna at least go try to bring it back to who is responsible for this fiasco, who's writing up this false smearing against her. It was the president, to hold her responsible. Because if, God forbid, something happens to her, someone needs to be held responsible for fueling that hatred. I think priorities for students. Are you a student? Yeah.
It's an open event.
It is, but they asked me to give it to students first. So let's do the students first, if there's time. I'm only here as their guest. I don't run the show. I wanted to invite me again because they have good food. I don't want to violate the rules. So, any students?
You had an interesting comment about the way, can you describe the ways Islam has been racialized within the U.S.? You talked about anti-black sentiment, anti-Latino sentiment. How has Islam been racialized within the U.S.?
Excellent, very good question, actually. If you look at the Islamophobia industry, and there's an industry with about anywhere from 30 to 70 organizations, about 34 fully dedicated organizations to the production of fear of Islam. Speakers, books, material, blogs, lies on a daily basis, picking things out of context. Somebody says something, they take the first half of what they said, twist it this way, attributing things in any way they can. So there's an industry. The budget for this industry is about $50 million a year, producing material, sending speakers, trying to sway people at churches, synagogues, colleges, universities, and they're paid to do that. Now, if you look deep into what the industry is doing, it is not really about understanding Islam, because actually 5 minutes talking to anybody, you find out they have no clue. And whatever they bring up that they dislike about Islam, they say, Islam says this about, rights, about, it exists 10 times more in the Bible. And I studied the Bible, I went to Christian school. It's in the Old Testament, much more. They say, there's a violence, the Quran says there's violence. Well, read the verse before and read the verse after. It tells you when you can defend yourself, and it says if the aggressor stopped, then you should stop. It's a very conditional. But I can bring you up verses from the Bible, and I can show you what it calls for violence, and it's unfortunate, not very qualified, like open-ended. And yet Muslims don't blame Christianity or Judaism for that violence, because we understand only somebody who's twisted mind would take a verse from the Bible and use it to kill or harm an innocent person. But these bigots and Islamophobes, they don't use that because they don't care. It is not a religious thing. So what we've found out is actually, to a great extent, is very political. Political in America, political internationally. So there's a whole industry that makes money, that benefits from warfare. And having an enemy, an other, is needed. Whether that enemy is Iraqis, Afghans, Somalis, you name it. There's a need to have an enemy because that industry depends on that. You know, if we really cared about Islam, if we really cared about religion, why are we allied with one of the worst extremist governments in the region, Saudi Arabia, that claims to be using Islam, right? And this is one of the biggest allies in the Middle East is Saudi Arabia. And we fund Saudi Arabia's warfare against Yemen, killing innocent people. We don't care about human rights, let's face it. If we really cared about human rights, why are we so close to people like Sisi, who is, according to every human rights organization in the world, is one of the main abusers of human rights in the region? We don't care. We know it's a military coup against a democracy, but because we're interested in making sure we have our people there. So in order for that to happen, we have to create enemies. We have to have others. In this case, Muslims are convenient. It's convenient other, but have to put, in all fairness, with this growing, revived white supremacy sentiment in this country, whoever thought it would be, you know, it's almost like when you play with fire. When you play with fire in a wood, you know, you can't contain it. That same white supremacy today is targeting fellow Americans, Jews, Christians who don't agree with these, you know, the black churches being targeted, progressive churches being targeted. So it's not only mosques. And that's where it's dangerous. And unless we realize that this politics is never helpful for anybody, it's because you create a monster that you cannot contain. It is important for those who have, you know, common sense and understanding to understand that racism has always been bad for our country. So in this case, back to your question specifically, it is not really about the religion, because even people who are not necessarily practicing Muslim, but if they have a Muslim sounding name, they still get under the attack. You know, if someone robs a bank and their name is John Doe, it's John Doe robbed the bank. If their name is Ahmed Doe or Ahmed Abdul, a Muslim robbed the bank, right? Suddenly we know the religion of the perpetrator. We know which mosque maybe they prayed at or maybe their parents prayed at. We would know everything that has to do that sensationalize the religious identity of that person. Actually, there were studies done, academic studies done, that even news coverage, when it comes to covering news involving domestic terrorism conducted by white supremacists, it gets by far less coverage than any case involving someone who professes to be Muslim. Talk about like 700 times more for the other cases, Muslims. Because there's an element of sensationalism that is intentional. And just to, you know, not make Muslims feel so special, you're not that special, racism has existed in our country since before our country has existed. That's the reality. It has influenced, unfortunately, many of the injustices that I talked about. It's racism. So the only way we can defeat this new form of racism, and it's not, again, it is not the only one that exists. We're dealing with multi-level. I mean, if anybody is watching the news over the last few months, we've seen black churches attacked, synagogues attacked, Sikh temples attacked in Wisconsin, mosques being attacked by the same strain of ideology. It is white supremacists who are fearing that other, the Catholic, the Sikh, the Muslims, the Hindus, the Jews, the blacks, the migrants, the immigrants, the Latinos. And if anyone thinks that they can defeat this alone or by befriending it, we can ask the survivors of the Holocaust if that worked with the Nazis. It never works. It never works. You cannot contain racist people intent on eliminating you, who don't consider you human. The only way is for everyone to realize, think of being, for us today, we might be the targeted people. But my message to those in our country today, if you are not targeted, don't be the silent German during Nazi Germany. Don't be the silent German, because eventually it was not only the gypsies and the Jews and the handicapped and the gays who got killed. You know what? Everybody paid the price. Germany was destroyed. And Germany lost many of its people because of that, because they remained silent. So it is more serious than it seems. Hopefully, we're way before white supremacists become a serious threat to the point where unstoppable. Unfortunately, we have an irresponsible president who's fueling it. I think for convenience. I don't think himself he believes in any ideology. The only ideology he follows is how to become rich. But other than that, he is willing to do and say anything that will rile up a base and in order to rile up the base, you need an enemy. And that enemy changes every once in a while. It could be Islam hates us, that's what the president said. And Donald Trump is going to, ban Muslims from coming to America. But also it's the same one who called Mexicans rapists. It is the same one who talked about the caravan, the invasion basically of Central Americans. And I'm so glad many in our country are realizing that, that threat is a collective threat to all of us. So that's why, for the first time in decades, you see these targeted communities coming together in ways I've never seen it before. You see progressive Christians, progressive Jews, you see Latinos, Asian Americans, you see Muslims, you see African Americans coming together and bonding politically, economically, and in every way we can, in order to prevent the divide and conquer racism that exists in our country. I think I saw another hand here. Oh, your hand, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if there's like a piece of advice that you could give to all of us as like Muslim students or like just taking steps forward, what would you recommend for us to do?
Yeah, good question. I would say, first of all, be hopeful. It's not gonna be like that forever. Now you're being harassed. We conducted a study in the state of California, which is one of the most diverse states in the country, about school bullying. We surveyed over 1,000 Muslim students who go to high schools, in public high schools. And about 54% of Muslim students said they've been subjected to physical or verbal bullying at school, ranging from being called terrorists, being called sand niggers, pulling their hijabs, murderers, being beaten up, you name it. And it happened by teachers as well as students, classmates. And if you ask any other community, they've gone through similar hate, and some continue to go through hate. But there's a light at the end of the tunnel. One is, evil cannot exist forever. It's a phase, it's a transition we're going through now, because as a community, we're still a growing community. In a way, if you exclude the immigrant, if you exclude the indigenous African American Muslim community, the immigrant community is still relatively new. Talking about the turn of last century, basically. In maybe late 1800s, there was a wave, and then in the beginning of the 1900s, and then the 1940s, those who came after the partition and after the occupation of Palestine, and then you're talking about 60s after the war, and then in the 70s and so on. So waves that came in, but in reality, it's not a community that has existed for decades. It's not a community that existed for centuries. Islam has always existed in this country. The history of Islam in this country is as deep as the history of this country itself, through the slaves who were brought in. About a third of the slaves brought into this country actually were Muslim. There are manuscripts now proven, shown, written in Arabic by some of these slaves. Some of them hosted in libraries, some of them hosted in museums,
And who
actually
captured them in
documented
Europe?
very well.
In
So the
Africa.
history of Islam in this country is not new. And the history of Islam continues with the perseverance and resilience of those. Imagine,
What about the
if a
Arab
slave
traders?
person, tortured, whipped, denied basic human rights, chained, can still hold to his Islam or her Islam at whatever they were being held, we have it much easier. Alhamdulillah, we're not being lynched, right? We're not, we're dealing with things that are very much bearable So look at what is happening, but also recognize that